Welcome back to Plague Scythe Studios, everyone. Me again, but joined with my brother from another mother, Leon Todd. If you did not see our prior video or the one that's going up the day after this, don't know what the order is yet, but be sure to go check out his channel with his top picks of worst and best NAMM products from 2020. And I want to be kicking it off today with a product that we discussed on his video, the Zoom G11. I don't know where to begin with this.
Oh yeah. Well, let's begin with the aesthetics.
So you described it a certain way. Would you like to kick this one off with the one of the lines that you messaged me?
I have to remember this now because I want to do it justice. I remember, when sometimes you write a message and you chuckle to yourself, like, I'm so great. Let's see. I have our thread here where all we do is complain about gear and silly stuff. Well, it is hilariously bad looking, and it does need to become a meme. I really hope for the thumbnail for this, can you please make the meme we discussed?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, it'll be there,
right.
No doubt.
Yeah, there you go. It looks like they just cut up some super soakers and added switches to it. That's
Brilliant.
really those. Like, wow. What? So let's go from right to left. There's an expression pedal.
Which doesn't match the overall, aesthetic, but we'll ignore that for now.
And then, hey, to its credit, got some kind of cool stuff. It does look horrendously bad, but 5 individual effects blocks from the looks of things.
Right.
Each with their own foot switches and 4 knobs. So it's kind of got the Boss ME series thing going on there.
Right.
They've each got a scribble strip. Above that, there's an amplifier section with a similar little scribble strip. So that all looks very, mid-2000s multi-effects.
Then we have a Fisher-Price iPad on the left side for a product that's going to live on the floor for a vast majority of its life. And for whatever reason, all but a couple of the marketing photos I could find of this have, there's no power. So you get to see the lovely gray greenish LCD on all the stop boxes and everything. And then it's donned in a lovely, a carbon fiber fake finish that reminds me of a lot of the decals my friends would put on their Xbox 360 controllers when we were in middle school. So really just screams of quality overall.
But then they're bank up and patch and scroll buttons are these super soaker looking, they look like they would be absorbent. I don't know what is going on there or how they work. I love the press photo as well because, as you said, it's not on. But then the way it's shot, it's just, it looks like people have just been touching it all day. It's really...
Oh, yeah. It's fingerprint magnet everywhere. And to be fair, I like where they're going with this in some ways. They've got, rotary encoders on the quote-unquote amplifier section that kind of tracks where you were at, an AX8 or a lot of modern products would. So that's cool. I like the idea of individual stomp boxes for maybe those that, stuff like scenes or switching presets may not be, it's a workflow that they're used to. That is kind of cool.
Yep.
The real failure here is that you've got 2 different display technologies that look completely different from one another. And it's, I'm not one to complain about the aesthetics of audio equipment in general. It's audio, it's what it's meant to do. So we're really trying to satisfy one sense, but they've gone so far in the other direction that you can't ignore it. It literally looks like an R&D prototype. I would be ashamed to show my boss this for being called out as being blind and having no sense of design whatsoever. So yeah, that's the G11, I guess. Have you heard demos of this thing yet?
No. Have you?
I've heard all of 30 seconds and it sounds like a Pod XT.
Okay.
Yeah, the cleans and everything sounded fine. There was the super low mid scooped high gain sound where there's way too much bass. It's cool on its own, but yeah, that's kind of the sound that they were able to produce with this.
When you eat a rice, a really big Rice Krispie treat, and you take a huge bite of it, and you've kind of got it in your mouth, It's like if you were to expel air from your lungs through that, that's what the distortion sounds like. That's that sound to me, that kind of like with
Nailed it.
with rice bubble filtering in there. So, I mean, I still really want to try the G3N, I think, the little one they make. It's pretty affordable. And
yes,
I've been meaning to do a demo with that because I have a hunch you can make that sound killer.
I'm sure.
And, I mean, this probably can sound okay. Does it have IR loading?
The details are really scarce. I would hope so at this point, but hell, you never know.
Who knows? It's just, I'm sure it's fine. There's some cool, like, as you said, it's almost there. Like, it just aesthetically, it is horrendous. Worst in show for looks, you know? And if that's a totally vain thing to say, whatever, you know, maybe this thing will come out and be really affordable and that will offset it, but
right.
Maybe it'll be a great rehouse project.
Yeah. Digital modeling rehouse project. Yeah. I haven't heard of those since like the early 2000s. If that is the worsted show, then I think contender for at least top 2 or 3 would have to be the Line 6 Pod Go. And I hate to say it, even as someone who I'm sure we share pretty much the same view, you know, Helix amp modeling to me is way better than HD, Pod HD that is, but it's not quite there. There's still, you know, some things that once you put it in a mix, it sounds completely fine. But in terms of getting the tones, I don't enjoy the workflow as much. But I am unironically pumped for this thing to release. It's basically exactly what I wanted in a budget Line 6 product, to be a complete shill and promote my own content. Again, I shot out every single Line 6 Pod desktop last year. And, you know, at the end of that process, I basically came up with some things that I think Line 6 could do to revisit Pod. And I mean, all but like 1 or 2 things they've done here. Hopefully they don't revisit the desktop anyway, because I think they've sort of outgrown that form factor. But this has a semi-fixed signal chain that makes it super easy to not only dial in sounds, but put together, you know, new signal chains. Every foot switch does something different depending on which one of those effects you have loaded in. It's basically Helix Lite. It has to get rid of like, I think 30 effects or something from a full-blown Helix. You know, it can't run like, I think the Analog Man King of Tone model was one of the ones they axed. But otherwise, it's kind of like you take the best of HD amps and the ones that it can run from Helix, you put it in this thing, and for $450, I'm not finding a whole lot to complain about. So I welcome, you know, its existence. The only thing I could, you know, potentially nitpick is we're going on year number 5 that Line 6 has been running their same modeling technology, but I think they've put enough here that it's still kind of interesting. I don't know about you.
Oh, I really like it. Like, just, I'm looking at it on my screen right now, and I mean, you know, this is just me. I don't like built-in expression pedals, but this is like the perfect candidate for someone's first modeler. Like, if you think about 10 years ago, what the options were at that price point, if you wanted to, you know, this to me is like good on a lot. It's very clever on a lot of levels, because you're going to have guys who use a Helix or a Kemper or an Axe-Fx who are going to go, you know what, $450 for a killer backup that has everything in it? Sure. No, like that's a great semi-pro rig backup. To you know it's going to sound good enough. If you're somebody, if you're a parent buying an effects processor for your, you know, child who is seriously getting into guitar, this is the thing. You know,
all
like
day.
you will, like, it's affordable, it's fully featured. If you're, you know, like a young adult buying your first like really good piece of gear, you know, just like it ticks so many boxes and fills so many little holes in the market. You know, if again, like I think when I started gigging, or even like for me when I was in high school and I was doing, you know, we would have school band and stuff like that during the day. I had a pretty cool high school. I used to take a Boss ME50 to school with me and run that into a like Marshall MG or something.
Nice.
And that was a sick rig. Like that actually sounded pretty good. But the idea that you could take this, it's relatively, you know, if you're flipping burgers or doing the paper round or something, it's still affordable. Or if some of my students are 16 or 17 and they're getting into YouTube stuff, so same kind of thing. It's really cool. For me, it looks like it kind of reminds me of they also tried to update the M series as well.
Yes.
I really like the HX effects. That was cool, but this is a little bit more in line with the way like an M9 looks or something, and that's a great pedal.
Right. And it sort of feels that like Firehawk, I don't know, they've got like 4 or 5 products that I think this kind of obsoletes when you ignore the power requirements and everything. Like you said, I think it's the perfect kind of starting rig. This very much falls in line with the original spirit of the pod and then adds a whole lot more. So fully featured USB audio functionality, reamping, everything is going to be a breeze with this thing. Headphone out, the amplifier out really is cool. So not only can you run the main outputs with an impulse response, which you can load onto these or the built-in Line 6 cab models, but when you use the amplifier out, it disables the cab IR, so you can run front of house and a backline power amp and cabinet at the same time without having to mess with any signal chains whatsoever. And then that's in addition to the effects loop, which you can, put basically anywhere, both in front of and after the amp and cab section. So yes, you are limited in terms of there's always going to be an amp and cab. There's always going to be a wall and a volume block and parametric EQ. But for what they're going after here, I think this is, in my opinion, the ultimatum of what they've been building up to with Helix. Like, I don't feel the Helix platform is advanced enough in many ways to really deserve the price point. If I'm going to spend $2,000, I'm going with something that I can touch every little parameter, or I can get any amp model under the sun. And I feel they really hit the price point and the value with this thing. So hopefully I'll pick one up sooner rather than later whenever they come out and do a ridiculously long video on it. Also in kind of an interesting modeler space is the Mooer G300 Lite. So we covered the regular Mooer GE300. My one nitpick with this product is more of a cautionary tale of anything is, we're kind of getting into the realm, and I would say Mooer is already past that threshold with a lot of their pedal series. Is like, when do we start calling this like landfill gear? They're coming out with something new every 6 months. It's hard to keep up with. Like, didn't they just announce the 250 like 2 months ago, or is that a fever dream I had?
Yeah, I think it was less than that. So, they've got the GE300, the GE300 Lite, the 250, the 150, the 200. Do they have a 100?
I think so. I think they have literally a 1 or 2 button thing with a little expression pedal.
What isn't in there? The looper has less time and it doesn't have the synth engine. So, and it doesn't have an expression pedal built in, which I like. It kind of looks cool. It almost kind of looks like the Quad Cortex.
Yeah.
It's got the same silvery kind of thing, but I wonder, the Mooer, like, they'll probably do a GE400 and it will just be a complete knockoff of the Neural thing, because that's the way these things work.
Yep.
They totally went the Helix route with the 300, and I've tried the 200. I was pretty impressed with the amp modeling and everything like that. It's hard to fault at that price,
Right. And the 200, one thing that kind of turned, I was actually planning on getting a 250 for review until I read that it doesn't do power amp modeling, which is super important. It's like, the Mooer Radar has power amp modeling with its impulse response loading. And that is the difference between like these pedals sounding like kind of run of the mill to, oh, wow, these absolutely punch above their weight class. So I'm happy that at least the GE300 should deliver on some of those, I guess you could call them big boy features of amp modeling. Yeah. I'd be interested to see what price point this hits, because now they're in a really tight spot. Like 250 is around the $500 range. I think full-fledged GE300 is like $750 USD. So they don't have a lot of room to work with. But, if they have the amp modeling that I think both of us are really impressed with, on top of what I think are very competent effects, it could be something that is worth considering if you're looking at, pod go territory on up.
Yeah, cool. Very cool little piece of gear. And I mean, we talked about the quad Cortex in my video as well, but I would be keen to hear some of your thoughts on that as well. I know there's a lot of people who watch your channel who don't necessarily watch my channel who are super pumped about this as well.
Yeah. Again, go watch Leon's video for this topic for the complete rundown. But I think it's safe to say we're both excited to see what they bring to the table in terms of user functionality and audio quality. I think we both shared our reservations about the form factor in terms of you're going to have a big ugly brick to contend with, and it's kind of a desktop floor hybrid in a way, since all of the foot switches are encoders as well. But it's a really genius solution, and for someone's first hardware product, damn, it's impressive. It's not like Gen 1 Axe-Fx where it's a 120 pixel screen and stuff that would honestly be forgiven if they had gone that route, but they've kind of stuck to their guns on what they want to do. But yeah, I think my biggest issue, issues, number one, I'm not sure how this is going to fit in with their digital plugin environment in terms of, if you've already bought, say, Archetype Bossy or the Ford Nameless plugin, do you automatically have that on the Cortex? Is that something you load in separately, or do they have those stock and you just spent, $200, $250 on plugins for no reason? So I've yet to hear them really address that. The second thing, as we both discussed, is just the insane marketing surrounding some of this that is just hilariously stupid.
I don't know if that's obviously they are a Finnish company as well. I don't know if that's a lost in translation thing, but there was possible. A few things in there where it was, it was outrageous. And to Neural's credit, it's Darkglass as well. I think Doug Castro is the founder, CEO of Darkglass. Every Darkglass thing I've tried has been incredible. But
for sure.
I mean, when you look at the production quality of their product announcements and stuff, it's super, super slick. They are pumping a lot of resources into the marketing aspect of this as well. And I found it really interesting to see the response from the guitarisphere or whatever it is, on a couple of forums. And then of course, I'm sure you got the same thing. A bunch of people messaged me like, oh man, did you see this? It is the best. And they hadn't heard any clips. It was really interesting to see how well they whipped guitarists who are interested in modeling into this absolute frenzy without releasing any audio clips. And yeah, the marketing, the marketing side of it was super slick, but kind of reading beneath the surface as well, there was a lot of, there's some outrageous claims in there, which I think from a technical aspect, I'll let you talk about.
Yeah. So first things first, is their 2 gigahertz claim to their Shark processor. This is something that in practice, it really doesn't matter. Does it run their audio algorithms, and do you have low latency? If so, checkbox, move on. Who cares? This isn't, we're not folding at home. We're not crunching numbers. We're not running a universe simulation. We're not even trying to play CSGO at high frame rates. It doesn't matter. But when you run multiple cores at the same time of any, we can be talking about a phone processor, desktop processor, doesn't matter. It's parallel operations. That doesn't make it faster. So if you have 4 cores at 500 megahertz, you know what you have? 4 cores at 500 megahertz. You don't have 1 core at 2 gigahertz. And if you code for it properly, then you're going to get pretty much the same performance as if you had 1 core at 2 gigahertz. But as most of us know that, kind of deal in the tech world, some applications may be more multi-threaded than others, and that's not how that works. So I don't know why they made a point of saying that instead of just saying, hey, we've got 4 logic cores that can run this at the same time. Why even throw that number out there? It means nothing to no one, but for the people that know what it means and they know it's wrong. So I don't know. It's stupid.
Yeah, and I mean, to me, if it said, hey, we've got 4 500 megahertz cores, it's like, that I would just go,
it's cool, right?
Sounds like you can do a lot of stuff in parallel. That's a lot of cores. That's really, really good.
Yep.
And then I guess it's, I mean, you can argue about how responsible marketing campaigns should be. We talked about the Blue Guitar, the dynamic IRs thing as well, which was, go and watch my video on this, but the capture technology or whatever it is, and their machine learning spiel, again, like the average Joe Blow guitar player, which I am one, doesn't really know much about machine learning, but it's a buzzword and people just go Skynet.
You got it.
Like, well, is that what it means? So obviously it's super amazing and like it's gonna be a game changer, and like, I don't know, like that side of it as well, I was a little bit skeptical about, like, how are you implementing this in a foot pedal?
As you should be. I'm going to read an excerpt from an email I received from a contact who you could probably consider an expert in at least part of this field. To summarize it, he says, speaking of marketing, Neural DSP's marketing of their new hardware cracked me up, and I quote, this is directly from Neural DSP, our biomimetic approach relies on a unique combination of advanced machine learning techniques and neuroscience. Already should be kind of a red flag there. We invented a way to train an AI to perceive sound in the same way the human ear does. Quad Cortex's neural networks are hearing your rig in the same way that you do, giving it the most comprehensive and detailed detection system, and the resulting digitized rigs are the most accurate and powerful on the market. So first thing, he responds saying, this is exactly the kind of blatant marketing nonsense that made me embarrassed to work at my last job. But the more important thing here is something you pointed out, is human ears are shit. Why would I want a digital modeler to listen in a flawed way to its own signal path to correct itself? It makes no sense. Not to mention that you couldn't cram enough hardware at the thermal requirements into something like this to actually do any of that. So they've probably, condensed maybe some, machine learning, either tone matches or there's a way to go about this. I know firsthand that you can kind of extract both distortion and frequency response profiles through machine learning, but to say that it's doing this in real time is nonsense. It's not possible.
Yeah, it's a great looking product, but sometimes it's not what you say, it's what you don't say when you launch a product. I think a lot of the time, there is that thing where and people focus so much on ant modeling nowadays as well. And, we're at the stage where people can't tell the difference between a real mic'd up amp and a Kemper profile or an AXFX patch or, like your video you did, which was like the pod and plugins and amps. And there are the Marshall micro stack, which I thought actually sounded really good in that example. It didn't sound the same, but it sounded cool. It's like, that's not what's important anymore. It's that, like, for guitar players, it's workflow and it's the tactile response, that really is the hard thing to get with these kind of products, which you can't discern from a marketing blurb. But people jumping on it being like, this is going to be so much. I mean, how much better can guitar sound? It's like, it's not like this kind of spectrum with no ceiling. It's like, it's going to sound. It's going to sound, like there's, it's not like it's going to be this, and it's kind of like the same paradox where, anything I have listened to with experts on artificial intelligence or machine learning, where there's that paradox where it's like, if an AI is predictable, like if we can predict what it's going to do, then it's not really an advanced enough AI. Like it's not really what we can call intelligence. it is a proper artificial intelligence. By definition, we can't kind of predict what it's going to do. So there's that in that kind of futurist sphere. So yeah, with this, it's like, well, you know, guitar, the realm of what a guitar sound is like is actually pretty predictable. So we've had that technology for close to a decade where it's indecipherable. So I'm not saying it's not going to sound great and it's not going to be an amazing product to use, but the hype train that just, it was a really, I think as like a meta thing on top of that, it was interesting to see people's reaction to it. And yeah, very, very interesting in that regard.
I agree. There's no way at this point that the tonal possibilities of this product will ever live up to not even the hype people are making, making for it, but just the drama, I think it's up to like 89 or 90 pages, this thread on the gear page about the Cortex. It's just never going to live up to that. But
yeah,
regardless.
And a lot of that is just, there's all these like I had a look at that thread recently, and it's, there's a whole thread about people like, okay, this is why this unreleased thing is better than the Helix. And then a whole other thread of, this is why this unreleased thing is a Kemper killer. And another thing, this is why Fractal shouldn't even bother releasing the FM3. And another thing, which is like, this is why it's actually more powerful than the most powerful processor on the market. And it's like, I don't like, like that's the gear page as well. Like that's going to happen. But
yep.
Yeah, it's just interesting to see people, like laying out their preconceptions like that. So, just wait till it comes out and try it, and it'll probably be pretty good.
More than likely. It's amazing to see the proto fandom of something that isn't even out yet. But unfortunately, it's not confined to this industry. You see it all the time elsewhere. All right, I guess move to these VOX products, which appear both in my best and worst list. I want to start with these VOX new tube equipped valve energy pedals, and there's no audio demos that I've been able to find that are just strictly these pedals, because there are a couple modes where it could be strictly this this pedal, and that's kind of what's exciting to me. But there's two things that I think deserve some praise for this. Number one, the new tube technology is something that has been so underdeveloped in the past few years. I remember seeing like the first. Maybe it was a Tube Screamer that had like a new tube in it, and I think VOX made some miniature lunchbox heads that had them. But in that time, they've barely done fuck all with the new tube tech, which is kind of disappointing because it is exciting. You could shrink it down to that. So I'm always open to see more pedals and products that use it. But these have miniature OLED screens on them that generate a waveform. That's pretty cool. I mean, it's completely stupid and not necessary, but at least it's interesting. But what's really exciting to me is, on the surface, some of the stuff kind of sounds boring. We got a classic rock stack in a box. Woohoo. It's another Angry Charlie. Or we got the Mystic Edge, which is an AC30 kind of thing in a box. Or a Dumble kind of drive, or Cutting Edge, which is voice for modern metal. But what I like about this is they go for an approach that I've kind of asked for indirectly. We have all these amp in a box pedals, and we have overdrive pedals, and they sort of, cross each other's paths in terms of where they sound best. And, maybe this pedal, even though it's advertised as an overdrive, actually sounds better as a preamp and an effects loop. Well, this has 3 different modes, where you can use it as a standard drive pedal. You can use it as a preamp pedal, which I assume maybe it shifts a tone stack or throws on a post EQ curve or something like that. Or you can load a cabinet sound, or at least it has a built-in cabinet sound. So you can run this thing direct to board or through other direct effects if you want. And it even has a link, which I guess is another like miniature MIDI thing. But it can turn on and off other pedals as well. So I think it's a clever little solution that sort of solves 2 or 3 problems at the same time. And, I've tested a number of distortion and overdrive pedals to me that work better as preamps. So I'm glad someone else in the industry realized that's the case.
Yeah, and I mean, they don't have a price listed. I'm just looking at it at the moment. But that'll be interesting to see what price point these hit. I mean, it would be a hard sell for anything over, I guess, like $200 American dollars.
Oh, for sure.
But if it is around that price, then that's a pretty cool thing to chuck on your board and have. The only thing I can think of like this are those AMT series, which I had one of those. That was the thing. That was my last hurrah before I just bit the bullet and got a modeler. I tried one of those, and it was okay. I didn't love the cab sim in it. I mean, it'd be cool to see. I wonder how this would work with a Mua Radar. That would probably be killer because it's bigger than their Micro Series pedals.
I'm imagining the onboard cab sim is probably completely analog. Could be wrong. It'd be nice if it is a real IR. That would make it stand out. But yeah, I could foresee this plus something like another cab loading pedal to be a nice little fly rig thing if you're more into the pedal workflow or whatever. But even if it is, surely it's not over like 250. But you never know. OLEDs are expensive, so
I would
that's the other thing. Yeah, I would hate for them to sacrifice the price point for that little stupid edition, but you never know because of the issues I have with the next product. But
gosh.
Yeah, overall, I think if if you're looking at like a Bluesbreaker derivative, even on up to like a full distortion pedal, like a rev pedal or something, you're going to be paying 150 to 200 for those anyway. So if you get a free feature that lets it be kind of a preamp overdrive or a full on all-in-one pedal, then I think that could potentially be worth the asking cost. It's an interesting idea nonetheless. I'd welcome seeing this from other vendors that kind of know what they're doing, like Mesa Boogie or other people like that. But that's all really to launch into the product that I really want to talk about, which is the VOX Cambridge, aka the less capable, more expensive Boss Katana. This to me simply screams of a boardroom meeting of a bunch of suits and ties saying, hey, we're losing X amount of market share in this price point. In 6 months, we need a product that hits these check marks. So make it. Because I don't know about you, but when I think of the name VOX, I don't really think amp modeling. Doesn't really come to mind.
Well, they did have, I think for some people, who maybe 15 years ago, they had the Valvetronics, and I remember they were fairly popular here. Maybe it was because, when did Korg buy Vox? Was it around that time or
around that time?
Suddenly,
early 2000s.
It felt like suddenly Vox stuff was everywhere because Korg stuff was everywhere in music stores, and the Valvetronic stuff, especially the all-in-one amps. I never owned one, but I had a few friends who owned them, and that. I think when you then suddenly, are more than 16 years old and you go and maybe do a few gigs or you have to do a show where you have backline, you run into this thing, or you do a recording session, you run into this thing called the AC30, and you may or may not get it to start with, but then eventually you get it, and then everybody thinks of that sound, which is not just one sound. Everybody knows, it's that spectrum between Brian May and the Edge, really, like jangle jangle or kind of like a really unique character rich kind of crunch. So that's what we all think of with Vox, not modeling amps.
Yep. Yeah. Of course, every brand and their brother nowadays has some sort of digital modeling thing, but I don't think anyone's considering the Marshall Code or Fender Mustang, up in the top 10 modelers by any stretch of the imagination. And that's really the problem with this. It is more expensive than some of the best competition on the market, while having fewer features. It is foot switchable and you can change channels and stuff. But, basically all of the main features are right there at your fingertips, which is good in one way. But when you don't have a presence or even a middle knob, then, it kind of defeats the purpose a little bit. There is power scaling, which is kind of cool for, playing late at night or whatever. Ultimately looks like a rebadged master volume control to me, but whatever. And it does take advantage of new tubes, which is cool. I do like seeing even a semi-hybrid approach or even a full analog approach where you can, kind of switch around stuff, sort of like a budget tri-axis of sorts. But that's not what this is, of course. My biggest issue with amps in this class in general, you take something like the Boss Katana and it's got an acoustic amp, kind of a really clean model. You got like an edge breakup, crunch, brown sound stuff, and you got a couple variations of each. With a 1x12 speaker cabinet, you can voice 4 or 5 amplifiers to sound pretty damn good through the thing. There is no way in hell you're going to make a VOX AC30 model and a Soldano model sound good through a 1x12 at the same time. It's just not going to happen. And I have heard a couple clips of this, and yeah, I mean, it sounds like a distortion pedal, more or less. It's better than, stuff that was available to us 10, 15 years ago. But ultimately, it's not adding anything new. Again, I think it's just another excuse for a brand to say, we have one of those too. So if you were looking at this product, then hey, you want VOX on the front, don't you? That's pretty much it.
Yeah, I think that absolutely just smashes the nail on the head. And that's kind of like, there wasn't too much other modeling stuff other than everything we've now mentioned between our 2 videos, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much it in terms of the digital world, at least for what people actually care about. So one thing that is in the digital world that's super exciting to me, I assume it's digital, I actually don't know, is the Ranger minibar. Now, if anyone hasn't heard of Ranger effects, I highly just go look at some of the wacky stuff this guy makes. He's a mad scientist in real life, Mr. Ranger is. But this one, I can only hazard a guess as to what this is doing, but I want to buy one just to see. And $160 is not something that I would like to just throw around casually, especially for something the size of a Moore pedal. But the Ranger minibar apparently takes a little capsule and you pour different liquids into it. And depending on the properties of said liquid, and I guess you got a single volume or level tone or control of some sort there, it will change the character of that pedal. What do you think? How do you think this works? Because I have a couple theories, but I don't know which is correct.
I'm guessing it is some kind of optical thing. Like if it's not a digital pedal, like it's so small that there would have to be something in there. But I'm guessing that it is using some kind of optical signal through the liquid, and it's using, basic high school physics stuff. What happens when you shine light through a liquid? It can diffract. It can filter out particular things. So it must be basically taking some very basic measurements and then mapping those onto a 0 to 10 tone control or drive control, or it has to be. That would be my initial this is the basic idea of what it does. So yeah, I'm just looking at it's a liquid analyzer pedal. What does it say here? It has a volume knob and a small watertight container mounted on the top panel. Pour some stuff in. There's like a green light that it shines in there. So who knows? Who knows?
Yeah, that's kind of my. I think it might be a hybrid. There's definitely agree with the optical part, because otherwise, if you had 2 liquids that are otherwise the same with food coloring, then maybe it would sound the same, maybe it wouldn't. But I'm wondering if there's any maybe some electrical conductivity going on to
possibly
analyze in some way, like secondhand, how ionized or how carbonated something is. And I want to test this. I legitimately want to get one and see if, you pour like food dye colored water versus a beer versus a can of Coke. Do they sound the same just because of the same color, or does it actually measure some other properties? And if it's a liquid tight container, then I don't know how it would be doing that, but maybe, who knows?
It does say if there's no liquid, it doesn't make any sound. So there has to be something to do with conductivity there. Yeah, I mean, it's just made for content, isn't it?
Yes, exactly what it's for.
What sounds better, beer or bourbon? I think, you said that when it came out. It's like there's going to be, someone's going to cross that threshold and use bodily fluids in there. And
oh, yeah.
That's not going to be me, but someone's going to do it. And that'll be a day on the internet for guitar, But yeah, that's wicked. It's we were talking in my video about like products nobody asked for. Nobody asked for this, but at the same time, it's awesome. Like that does fill that niche of like, this is actually like it's properly outside of the box.
For sure. It's in a one way, is it practical? Absolutely not. But there are larger implications here. Stuff like this, stuff like the who's the effects company that does the you basically play a lightning bolt. They had something else new this year that's like an optical reverb pedal. Game changer. That's it.
Audio.
Yeah, it's stuff like this. It's like, there's more to audio processing than vacuum tubes and op amps and stuff, diodes. Yeah. We can come up with some cool stuff. So even if this is a fledgling tech, or even if it doesn't go anywhere, you're trying something new. And Ranger does that with basically all of his stuff. It's like pressure sensitive touch pads and all this stuff. And at the very least, I commend the effort. It's not boring. No one can say this stuff is boring.
Looking at their product archive, the Dr. Freakenstein Chop Fuzz, the Drone Ranger, I know a lot of people love that. The Overtone Bleep Fuzz, the Airspace Invader. It's like Deep Space Pulsar. They look ridiculous, like in a really cool way. And they've just got some, like, what do they call it? The Igor touchpad. Or yeah, it's as you said, it's really properly different, and just goes to show that it kind of just demonstrates how like conservative guitar stuff is really, most people are using exactly the same ingredients, and then this stuff's coming out and just being like, ha. Exactly.
I think I'll get my hands on one at some point, but I'm afraid to, because then this will open a new rabbit hole for me.
Yeah.
But one thing that definitely is boring, at least our consensus is such, is the Maxon Apex 808. That's right, folks.
Oh, God.
Another tube screamer. Remember that Groundhog Day thing I mentioned, just like last year? Another year, another op amp into soft clipping pedal. Now, this one is supposed to be special because it was designed by the original Tube Screamer designer, Sasuma Tamura, ignorant American, can't speak his own language, let alone Japanese. But the advertised specialty of this is that they apparently chose a specific production period of a specific integrated circuit chip to complete this pedal. And everyone argues over like, oh, this is the best op amp. This is the best op amp. The truth with circuits in general is if you design a good one around whatever component you're using, it'll work fine. And 99 times out of 100, the op amp has so little to do with these. Like if you have a garbage one, then yes, it'll suck. But if you have one, it's like one of those threshold things where if it's over a certain amount of clean headroom, then you're not going to hear the difference. Actually, Brian Wampler has a really good video on that.
I've seen that one. That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, there's like two of them that are standouts because they're weird, and it's kind of the same deal with diodes. But this supposedly offers more even order harmonics on the lower end of the gain structure, and more odd order as you turn it up. But is anyone going to be able to hear this in a blind shootout? I don't even care about that anymore. It's just, why do we need more tube screamers? It's a meme at this point, and it's just asking for it.
There you go. Yeah, I don't have a lot to add about that. It's another tube screamer. Move on, kids.
Woohoo! I can't wait to see how much they charge for this one. Wasn't the one from last year, the red color one, like $300 or something stupid like that?
Oh, yeah. I think there's a lot to be said for sometimes just don't engage, and I'll not be engaging with that thing. So
yep, I have to agree.
Shuffle along.
Back to some good stuff then. As some of you probably know, I'm a Behemoth fan, and Nergal got a new signature this year, and it looks pretty sick. Not gonna lie. ESP in general looks, even last year they had a lot of cool stuff. This year especially as well, but the standout for me, aside from the Phoenix Black Metal, which is kind of a similar shape, and I do like their Black Metal series, is the LTD NS6. And at first, the shape is something that wouldn't be up my alley. It's super asymmetrical, and it kind of looks like it's wearing a corset, but maybe I like the curves.
Oh,
I
yeah.
don't know.
Yeah. No, that is an interesting take. I
Yeah,
can see that now. It does just
yeah,
look awesome. Like
it
you look at
does.
it, and I think there's a thing with offset guitars a lot of the time where they've either got to be super duper ugly or they've actually got to be like kind of balanced. And I mean, you've got the upper horn is very Explorer, Destroyer. The bottom horn is kind of Gibson RD, Stoneman, and then the rest. Yeah, it does have that hybrid between a bunch of different offsets, but it's got its own thing going on. I like the reverse headstock on that design too. That's
Oh, me too.
I think you said a bit of Firebird about it. So it's yeah, it's cool. I'm into it.
Yeah, definitely. It has a whereas some of these other classic guitars might be like 60s, 70s muscle car, this is like 57 Chevy to me. It has a very cool curve, even though it's, black and death metal or whatever they are nowadays. I can't even keep up. Truth be told, I'm not a huge fan of their last couple albums. But I don't care because Nergal's the man, and he kicked cancer's ass. He can do whatever he wants as far as I'm concerned at this point in his life. And
exactly. And they've got, I mean, the LTD stuff. I mean, there's a Javier Rees signature guitar, which I'm not like, it's PRS-ish, but it's got its own thing going on. I'm not sure how you would describe that. Go and look at it. The Alex Wade baritone is like, that's kind of, that finish is like very much, that's the 2010s summed up in a guitar in a lot of ways, but I like how understated it is. It doesn't look like a signature guitar. It just looks like a cool baritone guitar. And the thing for me, I kind of had a moan about the Fender HM Strat on my video, but where is it? The 87 series Mirage Deluxe. That's a cool guitar. That reminds me of like, Michael Romeo or something. I like that.
Yeah, it's amazing how like two little changes turns that concept from completely discussing to like, oh, I see where they're going with that. A couple neck inlay differences and get rid of the middle pickup.
Yeah.
It looks awesome.
The only thing I wish was that it was a through neck, but it is an LTD model, so I get that they have to keep the price down somewhere. But if that was maybe they're doing an ESP version of that as well. Who knows? But yeah, really, really cool. Pretty impressed. I mean, ESP, LTD have always been super consistent, it seems. So, and as you said, the Deluxe Phoenix looks good as well. Like, cool shapes. If you're into, I like how understated they are. Rather than like, there's something of like, I've played a couple of Kiesels and they're pretty good guitars, but a lot of their thing seems to be that like, the arm cut where you see the 3 different layers of wood and the veneer-y kind of thing. It's not for me. I get that some people are really into that. I'd much rather, just have something understated like that where it's just, it's a cool plank of wood that you make music on.
Exactly. Completely agree. And we didn't even mention that a lot of this stuff comes with Fishman Fluence pickups, which is another added bonus if you're into those kind of sounds.
Really impressive. I'm pretty stoked about that. So yeah, they look really, really good, which I don't know, do you want to talk about the we haven't done it yet. Amazingly, over the course of filming this, we got to mention the Big G.
Oh, you guys know we got to shit on Gibson any video that we collaborate on. Slash series. Hasn't there been a couple Slash series before this, or again, am I like tripping and just imagining shit?
I know he's had a few different signature models. Most infamously, they did that recreation of a recreation, the Chris Derrig Les Paul, the Appetite guitar, which, I mean, looking at the Les Pauls, 2 of them look really cool.
Mm-hmm.
There's kind of the iced tea burst and there's the lemon burst. The green one is like the ugliest thing I've ever seen in my life. I'm not into that finish. And then there's kind of like a dark sunburst, which, whatever, But to be fair, the J45s look really cool, but you just know they are going to be so expensive.
Yeah, the Les Pauls are $3,000 a piece, and the J45s I think are $3,500 if I remember right.
That's a considerable chunk of change. Given, I mean, what is just a standard Gibson J45 run these days? Just for comparison, I'm curious to know.
Yeah, I actually don't know.
Slash on it, what do you get?
Let's take a quick
something
Google.
we should check. Yeah,
it adds about $900 to answer your question.
Well, yeah, there you go. You know, to be fair, like I've played a few of the newer Gibson J45s, and they're really good. Like, you do have to, if you want to go and gig with them, you probably need to chuck a pickup in them or something like that. But for an extra $900 to say Slash, and same thing with the Les Pauls, you know what I mean? I think it's just there's so many other options. While we're talking about that though, I was actually pleasantly surprised by the Epiphone range as well, especially the ones with the Gibson style headstocks.
I have to agree. That was a surprise to me. I know they had talked about releasing some Epiphones that had like the classic casino headstock. I didn't see any of those.
Yeah.
But yeah,
that kind of, to their credit, that sort of makes more sense if a guitar that says Gibson and is made in America is going to be hitting these kind of price points that, make the Epiphone the proper budget version of it with the same headstock and kind of just, like when you buy a Squier, it looks exactly like a Strat. It just says Squier.
Exactly.
I think it's taken them obviously a long time to cotton onto that, but I'm into that. But yeah, this is just, it's what you get at this level, I guess. But I mean, what would the equivalent be for Fender? Because they release some cool guitars and some, the HM Strat I talked about, I know, but it would be like, imagine Eric Clapton, suddenly there's 4 different signature Strats and 2 acoustics or something. They're really leaning into that celebrity endorsement thing there.
And it only got worse this year. Now we've got Jerry Cantrell and Phil X being endorsed by Gibson. It's just, man, they must be throwing some major dough. That's all I can say.
More power to those guys, especially Phil, because he's done very well for himself from the days when he was, doing demo videos for, what was that, Vintage Guitar Store? I always enjoyed that. I know he was a bit of an internet meme for a while, but a lot of respect for Phil, and I hope he made heaps of money out of that. Like, I would love to know that, he just basically said, you know what, Gibson made me this offer I can't refuse, and they're giving me lots of money, and now I don't have to ever worry about anything again.
Yeah.
Which is like I said, I really like Phil, and I hope they gave him lots of money for that. And, the Jerry thing, it's like, I know he's played Les Pauls live
that makes
recently
sense,
a lot, but like, come on, man, it's like the classic albums where, you always think about that, the G&L Rampage.
Yep.
So which is a guitar, I would love to get one of those. That's a pretty cool thing. But it looks like Gibson are just, for better or for worse, spending a lot of money on their celebrity endorsements because they did totally run their name into the ground over the last couple of years. Yeah,
it's probably the smartest move for them. I can't blame them. It just makes you scratch your head when you see another Appetite for Destruction model and you think, wait a minute, that wasn't even a real Les Paul, was it? But whatever. Details.
Small details.
To leave this on a more positive note, 2 back-to-back pretty cool products. We have the Friat Deliverance version 2. This is one of my favorite amp models on Axe-Fx firmware, and I damn near bought one. And this is making the gas like shoot off out of the roof. Just seeing that these are out again, because they keep pretty good prices on the used market, but they have such a unique. I mean, all the VHT amps, they're not clones of anything. They're kind of built from the ground up with new circuits, and they definitely sound that way. They're super tight and articulate, but you can get such a huge range of sounds out of them. So it's cool to see Friat stuff back on the market in new condition anyway. I know,
Stephen Friat's like, there's not many people out there, I think, who would know more about amps than that guy.
Definitely.
I mean, my understanding is the whole VHT name and the reason it got sold was quite complicated, and there were business considerations with that. It's like, it would be cool if it was still called VHT, because that just looks sick on the front of an amp. And
Yep.
I always think of those 80s racks where people had these huge things and they had the VHT power amps, but it says Fryette now and it's Stevie making them. So I'm with you that the Axe FX models of the Deliverance are just incredible.
They're to die for.
If you want to crack skulls, that's the way to go. So yeah, they look really good.
I really want to try a big bottom cab at some point in my life. That's so hard to find, even those speakers. But to end this off on, I think, a mostly positive product, one that I have some reservations about, but they've yet to really fail me yet, is Two Notes Torpedo Captor X. So they've basically, from what I can see, taken their regular 8 ohm or 16 ohm captor device and thrown on IR loading. Nothing to really complain about that, except the price has over doubled, which, fair enough if you're going to do all of that in one box. If you were going the direct recording route, I still think the regular captor is fine, because it actually includes a lot of, it's like, I want to say 15 or 18 cabinets on Wall of Sound that you can load up if you don't need to listen to that kind of stuff live. But yeah, this has got like 6 different presets that you can control from the front, headphone output, stereo output, which is new. That's something you don't see in a lot of these IR loading devices, which is great. Yeah, that's huge for me. If you're a single guitar player in a band context, then that could definitely be important. But like, just, in our little bubble recording demos and stuff, having stereo can really be important for some of that. You can control this thing with, both PC software and on a phone app, which I'm not huge on that, but more options, the better. I think that's pretty cool. And choose your IRs and microphones and spacing and all that kind of stuff from there. And I think it's got some more add-ons, like, I don't remember if I saw reverb, but there's definitely like a post enhancer and some EQ options, and kind of an all-in-one. It's sort of like the one product we were looking at earlier that's kind of does it all. If you're, in terms of cabinet and load modeling, I would assume, I've not looked, but I would guess this reactive load would be identical to their other products, so you're not getting that super low resonance. But for recording, it's good enough in my experience.
Yeah, I guess that's the one thing. Anytime someone asks me about that, like, why did you sell your captor and keep the X load? And it was literally just about the quality of the reactive load. I did shoot them out, and I just, I liked the X load more. I guess a lot of people like the Sir reactive load as well for that reason.
Did Fractal ever come out with the they've not done the IR loader on theirs yet? I hope that comes out at some point.
There was I know there was a thread over on their forum recently where it was like, which hypothetical Fractal product would you like to see? And I just kind of mentioned, it's like, hey, is this thing ever coming out? Because if you just took their X load and you added IR loading and you added the ability, even if it was just their reverbs, that would be a pretty amazing thing in there. But if you added, imagine if it could do 4 cable method and it was effects only, and shudder thinking about it. I'd love to see them do some standalone pedals as well, because
oh god, yeah,
because it's like so many people who I think would love their delays and their reverbs and all that kind of thing. Even if it was like, there's a multi-tap delay algorithm, just put that in a pedal, and price it like a timeline, and it can do so much stuff. Just
pretty much
have Matt do all the presets, and it's going to sound incredible because his mod stuff is always just the best. So yeah, that would be cool.
Out of this world.
I
do going back to line 6, which you touched on earlier in the video. That is one thing I do respect about Fractal, though. It's like, you know what? No, we're not going to, kind of cut up these products into different segmentations. We're just going to give it all to you. Screw it. And you know what? We're not going to budge on price point or quality, because that's what we would, that's what we'd buy. So,
and I guess,
yeah, there's a part of me that would love to see all that too.
I guess the thinking, even with something like an FM3, is it's like, if you're not into amp modeling, that thing in 4 cable method is going to be insane. It's like, it's going to be more powerful than a timeline and a Mobius and a Big Sky. And there's drives, and you know, you'll be able to run all of that, and there's custom routing in there, and yeah, you would be able to do a lot with that and an amplifier as well, even if you don't want to use, yeah. So, and it's what is it, like $9.99 US, which is like, just out of curiosity, what does a timeline cost from Sweetwater? My brain is now used to thinking in US dollars. Let's see.
Yeah, good luck with that.
Let's see. I don't know what that would be in Australian dollars.
It's a lot.
It's coming up now. But yeah, you know, you think about that kind of... So it's a timeline's $450 on Sweetwater. So for the price of a timeline and a Big Sky, you could... I mean, for the price of a timeline, you could get a Podgo.
Oh, yeah. And honestly, well, it's funny because a lot of the Strymon employees are ex-Line 6 employees.
Oh, right. So I didn't know that.
They kind of, I don't know when they defected, but yeah, as far as I know, they were kind of formed from a core group out of Line 6.
Right.
I guess when Yamaha bought them out or whatever. Makes a lot of sense, though.
Because they would damage control. I remember reading that. Like, ex-Line 6 people formed damage control, and then obviously they changed their name to Strymon. So, that's connecting the dots. That makes sense now. Yep.
It's one of those Matrix moments that, like, you always knew until you didn't.
Yeah, exactly.
It's funny. But to put into context, 450 USD, that's like 660 Australian. So I don't know what fractal stuff runs over there. But yeah, it don't take long to add up. If you're going to go for a few effects, just get an amp modeler. And don't use the amps. That's all you got to do.
Yeah, exactly. It's it does, or even, you know, like get a secondhand, if you can find them, a secondhand AX8 or an FX8, and you know, you can do all the stuff you do with these other things. You know, I get there's something to be said for one thing about the timeline. The presets are really good, like very, very good. You can get away with just using the presets, and then you've got the knobs on there. But you know, it's just spend an hour learning something. You will be better for it at the end of the day.
Sure.
That's the one thing sometimes where I see with the discourse, it's like this race to the bottom where every product is now trying to like really hit, let's make this for the dumbest person possible. No offense, because I'm like that with a lot of things in life. It's like, you know, when it comes to cars, for example, I don't know anything about it, just what works. So, but I also, you know, that's not I don't make my livelihood driving a car or something. It's like I play music and I play guitar music, so I should probably know how the guitar stuff in front of me works. Right. Just a little bit.
There's a time and place for all of it.
Yeah, that's a good way of saying it.
I think it's more of it's more of a stubbornness thing, I think. But you know, if you don't know how to dial in your gear, then just watch our videos, I guess, and download our presets.
Exactly. It's all free, which is nice.
I guess that'll wrap it up. Yeah,
free.
Just don't use an ad blocker, you dicks. I know how many of you do, and I know how, because I see that monthly revenue report. But I guess that'll wrap it up for my version of Best and Worst,
Fantastic.
Which was way too long, but it was a lot of fun. This is always a highlight at the beginning of the year for me.
Oh man, it was great. Always a pleasure.
So if you have not already, number one, go subscribe to Mr. Leon Todd and be sure to watch the Best Worst picks from him, in which I give my own snarky remarks. And stay tuned for next year, I guess, because Summer NAMM never has anything worth talking about generally.
Yeah.
And with that, thank you for watching. See you next time.
Peace out.
Bye.